You want to know the secret about people? It's simple. They love to talk. They talk when they're happy. They talk when they're angry. And they especially talk when they've got nothing better to do. But you're different, aren't you? You remain silent. You sit there, lips sealed, eyes dead, and it drives them crazy because silence is power. And you, my friend, haven't even started to grasp how powerful that makes you. You see, they need your reactions. They feed on them. It's their lifeline. They say something to hurt you, to break you, and they lean in just to watch you flinch. But when you don't, when all you give them is that cold, dead stare, they choke on their own words. It's almost pathetic, really, how desperate they are to matter, to be heard, to exist in your world. But that's the trick, right? Let them talk. Let them spit and scream and twist themselves into knots trying to reach you, because the moment you speak, you give them what they want. But silence is the cruelest. It echoes, it lingers, it keeps them up at night, replaying everything they said, everything they did, trying to figure out why it didn't work, why it didn't break you. Your silence becomes their obsession, their personal nightmare. They'll call it arrogance, they'll call it cowardice, but deep down they know it's control, your control. Think about it. Look at every miserable soul around you, drowning in opinions, choking on gossip, tearing each other apart just to fill the silence in their own minds. They can't stand it, that quiet, that emptiness. But you wear it like armor. You don't need to justify yourself to anyone. You don't owe them explanations, apologies, or a single word. Because the truth is, most people wouldn't understand you even if you did speak. They don't want the truth. They want comfort, lies that fit into their small, tidy worlds. And the truth is ugly. You want to know why they talk about you so much? Why your name is always on their tongues, even when you're not around? It's because they can't figure you out. You're an unsolved puzzle. A locked door with no key, and it eats them up inside. They need to label you, to box you in, to make you small enough for them to comprehend. But when you keep your mouth shut, when you refuse to play their game, you become limitless. You become everything they fear and everything they'll never be. Unpredictable, untouchable, free. And the best part is when they realize too late that your silence wasn't just a phase, when they finally stop talking long enough to see what you've become in that silence. Stronger, colder, sharper. They'll look at you and see all the pieces they tried to break, all put back together with scars that shine like armor. And that realization will haunt them. The thought that they made you this way, that their words, their betrayal, their lies only forged you into something they could never touch. People think silence is weakness. They think if you don't defend yourself, you've already lost. But the real war isn't fought with words. It's fought in the quiet spaces between them. It's fought in the way you keep moving forward, step by step, without stopping to explain yourself. It's fought in the way you let them talk while you build. Let them laugh while you sharpen. Let them doubt while you prepare, because sooner or later they'll realize. They'll see what you've been doing all that time in the dark, while they wasted their time trying to tear you down. And by then, it'll be too late. Their voices will fade, their names will be forgotten, and all that will remain is you, standing in the ruins of everything they swore you'd never build. So let them talk. Let them mock and sneer and whisper behind closed doors. Let them fill the silence with their cheap little words, and watch as your silence grows into something they can't escape, a presence that crawls under their skin and stays there. Because the deadliest thing in this world isn't hate or anger or even revenge. It's silence. Your silence. Ever notice how people can't help themselves? How they spill their guts to anyone who will listen, dragging your name through the mud just to make themselves feel a little less pathetic? It's funny, if you think about it, how the ones who talk the loudest always have the least to say. But you're different. You don't waste your breath. You don't hand out pieces of yourself to anyone with ears. You understand something they never will. Silence is a weapon. It's not the coward's way out. It's the smartest move you'll ever make. Because the less you say, the more they'll fill in the gaps with their own insecurities, their own fears. They'll build monsters out of shadows just because you didn't bother to correct them. Let them turn you into the villain if it helps them sleep at night. You see, people need enemies. It's how they justify their miserable existence. If they can point fingers, if they can make you the problem, then they don't have to look in the mirror and face what's really wrong. But you're smarter than that. You don't give them ammunition. You don't play their game. You just watch, quiet and patient, as they bury themselves with their own words, and that kills them. You can see it in their eyes, the frustration, the desperation. They poke and prod trying to get a reaction, and when all they get is that dead-eyed stare, they start to unravel. Because silence doesn't just haunt them, it exposes them. It makes them confront the emptiness of their own existence. They'll call you names, cold, arrogant, heartless. But that's just fear talking. That's them projecting their own weaknesses onto you because they can't stand the idea that maybe, just maybe, you don't need them. That you've found peace in the silence, power in the solitude. And that scares them more than anything, because if you're not afraid to be alone, then what does that make them? Weak, dependent, terrified of the dark. So they keep talking, trying to drown out that little voice in their head that whispers the truth. But deep down, they know. They know they could never do what you do. Face the silence and come out stronger. It's almost poetic, really. The way they try to break you with their words, not realizing they're the ones cracking with every lie they tell. The way they laugh a little too loud, protest a little too much, just to hide how badly they want your approval. But you don't owe them that. You don't owe them anything. Not your time, not your energy, and sure as hell not your words. They're parasites, feeding off attention and drama, and the only way to kill them is to starve them. Give them nothing but that cold, blank silence that keeps them awake at night, replaying every conversation, every insult, trying to find the flaw in your armor that is. You ever watch someone unravel? It's a beautiful thing, really. Watching them go from smug to nervous to downright desperate. All because you didn't bother to argue back. That's the power of silence. It makes them doubt themselves. It makes them second-guess every word that came out of their mouths. They start wondering if, maybe, just maybe, they're the problem. And that's when you've won. Without lifting a finger, without saying a single word, you've turned their own minds against them. You've made them their own worst enemies, and the best part? They'll never admit it. They'll keep talking, keep spewing their garbage, hoping to drown out that nagging voice that keeps whispering the truth. But you'll see it in their eyes, the cracks, the insecurity, and you'll smile. Because you'll know it's only a matter of time before they crumble under the weight of their own lies. Silence is an art. It's knowing when to speak and when to let the world's noise collapse on itself. It's about control, controlling what you give away and what you keep locked behind those cold, dead eyes. The moment you start explaining yourself, justifying yourself, you lose. You hand them the power, the satisfaction of knowing they got to you. But when you stay quiet, when you let them fill the silence with their own nonsense, you become untouchable. They can scream, rage, and call you every name in the book, and it won't change a damned thing. Because you don't need to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. That's the real joke, isn't it? The more they talk, the more they reveal about themselves. Their insecurities, their fears, their desperate need to be seen as something more than the hollow shells they really are. And you're just a mirror. You reflect all that ugliness back at them without saying a word. They hate you for it. They hate that you see right through them, that you can cut them down with a single look. But that's not your problem. Let them choke on their own words. Let them exhaust themselves trying to break through walls that aren't even there, because when the dust settles, when the echoes of their screams finally fade, all that will be left is you, silent, unbroken, and so far above their petty little games, they'll realize too late they never had a chance. And that silence will haunt them. It'll echo in every room you've ever left, every conversation you never bothered to finish. It'll cling to them, a reminder of every lie they told, every bridge they burned trying to tear you down, and they'll come to hate the sound of their own voices, the way it bounces back, empty and hollow without your reactions to fill the void. They'll hate it because for the first time, they'll have to listen to themselves, to the ugliness, to the pettiness, to the desperate, pathetic need to be heard. And it'll kill them, slowly, painfully, like poison in their veins. So let them talk, let them shout, slander, and spew their venom to anyone who will listen. Let them think they've won while you sit back in the silence, sharpening your mind, your resolve, because the deadliest warriors don't raise their voices. They don't waste time arguing with fools. They wait. They watch. And when they finally move, it's silent, swift, and merciless. That's who you are. Not the fool who screams into the void, but the storm that moves in silence, that strikes without warning and leaves nothing but devastation in its wake. And when it's all over, when they're left standing in the ruins of everything they swore you'd never build, they'll finally understand. They'll see what that silence really meant. That every word they threw at you was just a rope they used to hang themselves. So keep quiet. Keep watching. Let them talk themselves hoarse while you build your empire, brick by silent brick. Because one day, when they're standing in the ashes of everything they burned trying to get to you, they'll realize the truth. That your silence wasn't weakness, it was a warning. And by then it'll be far too late. Let them talk. Your silence will haunt them. And isn't it ironic how the ones who call you weak are the same ones who fall apart at the first hint of silence? They'll tell you to speak up, to defend yourself, to stoop to their level and roll in the mud just to prove you're not afraid. But the truth is, they need that noise. They need you to yell back, to justify yourself, to turn the spotlight away from their own miserable existence. Because as long as you're the enemy, they don't have to face the monsters hiding in their own shadows. But when you stay quiet, when you don't flinch or fumble or explain, that's when they start to sweat. That's when the cracks start showing. Because silence is a mirror. It forces them to listen to their own lies, to choke on the bitter taste of their own words. It shows them what they really are. Small, scared, insignificant. That's why they hate you. Not because of what you did or didn't do, not because of the things they accuse you of, but because you make them feel powerless. You strip away their illusions, their comfort in little lies, and you leave them naked in the cold, staring at the truth they've been running from their whole lives. And the worst part? They know they can't break you. They know, deep down, that no matter how loud they scream, no matter how many lies they tell, it won't change a damn thing. You won't flinch. You won't fight. You'll just keep watching with that empty, soulless gaze, allowing them to dig their own graves with every spiteful comment. Ever notice how the loudest ones are usually the first to flee when things go south? How those who act as if they are untouchable are the very ones who crumble the moment they don't have an audience cheering them on. That's where the difference lies between them and you. They rely on an audience, a stage, a spotlight to mask their flaws. But you've been alone with your demons for so long that silence no longer frightens you. It's home. It's peace. It's where you sharpen your mind and fortify your resolve, transforming every betrayal, every lie, every insult into fuel. Because that's the real joke. They believe you're silent because you're weak, because you're afraid. But the truth is, you're quiet because you're planning, because you're patient, because you've learned that revenge isn't something you serve piping hot. It's a cold, calculated game of chess. And while they're busy screaming and hollering, you're making moves they won't even notice until it's far too late. They'll label you emotionless, numb, heartless, dead inside. But that's just another lie they tell themselves to feel better about their own inadequacies. They don't understand that it requires far more strength to remain quiet than to lash out, that it takes far more control to walk away than to shout back. They don't get that you've already won the moment you refuse to engage in their game. Because silence isn't the absence of emotion, it's the presence of power. It's the discipline to know when to strike and when to let your enemies destroy themselves. And when you finally decide to speak, when you let your words cut through the air like a blade, it will be surgical, precise, and deadly. Because you don't waste words on the undeserving. You don't spill your truth to those who twist it into lies. You hold it, you keep it, and when the time comes, you release it. Like a blade to the throat, swift and merciless. They'll try to bait you, you know they will. They'll say things that aren't true, things that cut deep, hoping to see that flicker of pain, that crack in your armor. But the real art of silence isn't just about keeping your mouth shut. It's about keeping your eyes cold, your expression unreadable, a blank slate that drives them insane with frustration. It's about watching them sweat, watching them backpedal, stumble over their own words, and fill the silence with excuses, all while you remain seated, still, silent, and terrifying. Because when you refuse to react, when you deny them the satisfaction of seeing you bleed, you force them to face themselves. You make them confront the ugliness they've been projecting onto you, the darkness they've been running from their entire lives. And that is a fate far worse than any revenge you could ever serve. The truth is, Most people can't handle silence. It makes them squirm, it makes them fidget, it makes them fill the air with meaningless chatter just to drown out the voices inside their heads. But you've learned to make peace with that darkness. You've learned to listen to the whispers instead of running from them. You've built your throne in that silence, carved out of every betrayal, every lie, every broken promise. And now you sit there, quiet and unshaken, as you watch them tear themselves apart, trying to provoke you. You watch them scream, cry, and shatter, realizing far too late that the real battle isn't fought with words or fists. It's fought with an ironclad will, a resolve to keep your mouth shut and your eyes wide open. It's almost comical how desperate they get. They go from smug to furious to utterly pathetic, begging for a reaction, just a single word to prove that they still matter to you. But they don't. And that's what haunts them the most, not your silence, but what it means. They never mattered to you in the first place. Their words were just noise, empty, hollow, sharper than they could ever imagined. So let them talk. Let them scream your name, call you every vile thing they can think of. Let them waste their breath trying to tear down what they can't even begin to understand. Because every word they spit is just another nail in their own coffin, another echo that will haunt them long after you've walked away. And when they're finally alone, when the crowd has disappeared and the lights have gone out, that silence they mocked will be the only thing left to keep them company. Cold, empty, unforgiving, because that's the cruel truth, isn't it? Silence isn't just an absence of sound, it's a mirror. It forces people to face who they truly are when no one is watching, when no one is cheering them on, and most of them can't handle it. They crumble. They claw at the walls, trying to drown out that deafening quiet with anything, anyone. But you thrive in it. You turn that silence into armor, into a fortress that no amount of lies or slander can break through. And in the end, when everything is said and done, they'll realize your silence was never about weakness. It was never about surrender. It was a warning. A promise that the real storm isn't the one that screams the loudest. It's the one that moves in silence, strikes without warning, and leaves nothing but destruction in its wake. So stay quiet, stay watching, let them talk themselves hoarse while you sharpen your mind, your resolve, your hatred into something they won't see coming. Because one day, when they're standing in the ruins of everything they've destroyed trying to get to you, they'll understand what that silence really meant. That you never needed them, that you were always stronger alone, and that their words, oh, their precious empty words, were just the dying gasps of a world that was never meant to survive the storm that you've become. So let them talk. Your silence will haunt them. And isn't it beautiful, really? How silence strips everything down to the bone? How it exposes what's real and what's just decoration? Pretty lies wrapped in loud voices, trying to hide the emptiness underneath. They don't understand, do they? They think the world runs on noise, on opinions shouted through cracked speakers and comments typed by trembling fingers. They think that if they scream loud enough, if they drag your name through enough mud, they can bury you in it. But you know better. You've seen what happens when the noise fades, when the crowds go home and the lights die out. All that's left is silence. The cold, unforgiving silence that doesn't care about followers, likes, or the lies people tell themselves to feel a little less hollow. That silence is truth. It doesn't change. It doesn't bend. It just waits, patient and deadly, for the weak to tear themselves apart trying to escape it. That's what terrifies them the most, that you're not afraid of it. You've learned to breathe in that quiet, to walk alone with nothing but your own thoughts and the echoes of every promise that turned to dust. Because people like them, they need distractions. They need someone to blame, someone to hate, someone to paint as the villain so they don't have to face the fact that their lives are built on lies. That's why they talk so much. That's why they point fingers and scream betrayal like toddlers throwing tantrums, because the world didn't bend to their will. It's all a show, smoke and mirrors to hide the cracks in their own reflection. And when you refuse to respond, when you just keep moving forward with that empty silence, it shatters them. It makes them see what they really are. Small, scared, and hopelessly outmatched. Ever notice how people cling to their lies like life rafts? How they'd rather drown clutching at fiction than swim to shore on the truth? That's what makes them dangerous. Not their words, not their threats, but the way they'll tear down anyone who challenges. That's why they come for you. That's why they spew poison and whisper behind closed doors, trying to turn the world against you before you can speak. Because deep down, they know that if you ever did, if you ever let those words slip through clenched teeth, it would be the end of them. You've seen through the lies, you've seen the ugliness hiding behind their smiles, the rot beneath the surface. And that terrifies them. But here's the twist. The real reason they can't stand your silence isn't because they fear your quiet strength. It's because they know that without all the noise, without the distractions and the lies, they'd have to face themselves. They'd have to sit alone in that quiet, staring into the eyes of the monster they've become. And most of them, they'd rather burn the world to the ground than do that. They'd rather drag you through hell, rip apart everything you've built, just to keep from hearing that sound, the one truth that could save them. So let them play their little games, let them tell their little lies, let them build their castles out of sand and call it victory, because sooner or later the tide will come in, sooner or later every mask cracks, every lie falls apart, and all that's left is truth. The silence you never stopped embracing. Ever wonder why wolves never howl when they hunt? Why they move quietly, patiently, like shadows in the dark, while the sheep scream and scatter, running themselves to death? That's the difference between you and them. They think noise is power. They think if they shout loud enough, they'll win. But wolves don't waste breath. They stalk, they wait. And when they finally strike, it's quick, lethal, and without mercy. That's why your silence scares them. It's not about pride or arrogance. It's about the kill. It's about knowing when to hold your breath, when to keep your eyes cold and dead, and when to wait until they've exposed every weakness, every flaw. Then you can end it with a single move. No wasted words, no wasted breath, just the silence after the storm, the quiet that settles in as the bodies hit the ground. Isn't it funny how people love to play the victim, how they twist every word, rewrite every memory, paint themselves in white and you in black, just to avoid admitting they were wrong? You could scream your innocence until your lungs bled, and they'd still twist it, still turn it into something ugly to justify their own sins. So why bother? Why waste your breath on people who've already made up their minds? Why give them the truth when they'll only use it to build prettier lies? That's what they don't understand. Your silence isn't surrender. It's mercy. It's giving them a chance to save themselves before you decide to tear it all down. Because the moment you speak, the moment you let the truth cut through the air, it won't just end their lies. It will expose everything. Every secret, every betrayal, every lie they've ever told to keep their world from falling apart. The best part is watching them self-destruct, watching them spin lie after lie, digging themselves deeper until the whole damn thing collapses on top of them. And you, standing in the shadows, silent, unbothered, watching them drown in the poison they tried to feed you. It's poetic, really, how they sharpened the blade, tied the noose, built the gallows with their own hands, then acted surprised when the ground fell out from under them. All you did was wait. All you did was refuse to give them the satisfaction of knowing they hurt you. And that's what kills them. That's what will haunt them long after you're gone, the knowledge that you walked away unscathed, that their words were just wind in the storm, that their hatred only made you stronger. Because silence isn't the end. It's the beginning. It's the seed that grows in the dark, patient, deadly, until it blooms into something they can't kill, can't control, can't even begin to understand. It's the fortress you build out of every stone they throw, every dagger they stab in your back, every whisper that drips with poison. And when you finally speak, when you finally break that silence, it won't be to explain yourself or beg for forgiveness. It will be to bury them, to make sure every lie they told comes back to bite them, to ensure every bridge they burned lights the way to their own ruin. So let them talk. Let them scream and snarl and pretend they've won, while you sharpen your silence into something lethal, because words are just wind, empty, hollow, gone in an instant. But silence lingers. It haunts. It takes root and grows, twisting through the walls of every lie they've built, cracking the foundation stone by stone, until there's nothing left but dust, echoes, and the truth they tried so hard to bury. And when it's all over, when the noise dies down and the ashes settle, they'll finally understand. They'll see what you were doing all along, building, waiting, watching, with that dead-eyed silence that never flinched, never broke, never bowed. And they'll hate you for it. They'll curse your name with their last breath, whispering it into the dark long after the world has forgotten theirs. Because in the end, it was never your words that scared them. It was your silence. It was the cold, unflinching truth that you never needed to explain yourself to people who were too busy talking to listen. So let them talk, let them choke on their own lies and call it victory, because the silence they fear the most is the one that comes after. The silence that lingers long after they've run out of words, echoing in the dark, reminding them of every truth they tried to kill. Your silence, your truth, and that, my friend, will haunt them forever.